looked for the perfect template, looked for advice on how to structure my dissertation, I came across a blog, University of Denver, where a student was explaining as much as he could, as best as he could, what the defense was supposed to be. And he wrote, the best term that he heard for a doctoral defense came from someone who is an immigrant to this country and did not speak much English. After the doctoral student explained about the dissertation, the foreign exchange student said, oh, that's a special day. It's your harvest day. So welcome to my day of harvest. But before I present my fruit, if you will, to the committee for inspection, let me give you a bit of context to how I actually came to this point. So a couple of years ago, I was actually preparing for my proposal defense, and I was sitting at home talking with my mom, and she brought out a composition paper that I had written. I don't know, I was 12, maybe 13, wasn't the best writing, but whatever. The conclusion of the paper was, I wanted to make all black people rich. It's funny now, because it's such a daunting and arduous task, but that mantra stayed with me even through high school, where I started an investment club. Apparently finance was in my blood. Is that you snipping? I was be concentrated. So anyhow, I graduated from high school in 1996, and about that time, Detroit started to take a turn. Anyhow, that wasn't on my radar. So off to University of Michigan I went, which was about 50 miles away from home. And I was accepted into the College of Engineering at the University of Michigan. But for some reason, I didn't stay. So I transferred to the College of Literature, Science, and Arts, where I took most of my classes in econ or some sort of finance, something of the sort. During my time there, I had two main internships, and no, it wasn't for Popeyes, but it was for an investment bank where my project was to work the due diligence, the numbers, on how to bring more Popeyes chickens to Detroit. I think about 30 or so, if I'm not mistaken. And this particular internship showed me behind the scenes on how development happens. The numbers, capital. It also helped me land my next internship, where I worked for Gail Perry Mason, who is a huge broker in Detroit, some odd 6,000 clients. And there I was able to see the role of small investors and how it all kind of came together. So, matriculated through the University of Michigan with a degree in economics, and some may not know, I also have a degree in biological anthropology. But here I come. My first job, as Dr. Zoide mentioned, I was an institutional equity trader. Thought I was big time. Basically, an equity trader, or at least my sort of equity trader, I find the best prices for portfolio managers when they buy and sell huge volumes of equities. But let's just say I grew tired of the profession and searched for other alternatives. So my mom suggested I put forth my 4 years of calculus at the University of Michigan and go and teach nighttime algebra at the Prince George's Community College, which I did. And I liked. And I loved. Sometimes. Most times. But apparently I'm a glutton for punishment, and I thought finance was where I needed to be, and the finance industry would be kinder if I was in a management role. So back to school I went for my MBA in finance, which eventually landed me a job as the manager of derivative and option trading at Capital Financial Group. But I grew tired of the unnecessary stress, so let's just say, search for new opportunities. So now what? I still had the same mentality, I still had the same mantra in my head from years ago, making all black people rich. Still makes me smile when I saw it. But how could I work towards this? Well, first, I wanted to explore ways to sustain communities, states, whole countries, the whole continent of Africa. Didn't matter, my imagination was big. And I thought trade of agriculture, trade of food was the step in the right direction. So I put together a management team to open up a fast food organic restaurant in which my supply chain would link back to the continent. We were half funded. I didn't take the money. So I still wanted sustainability. Here I come to the Department of African Studies specifically to study or research sustainability, techniques, literature, what have you. Even Dr. Egger, I think, was the first person to talk to me about a project, and he mentioned remittances. But remittances just wasn't my thing. Apparently stock markets are my thing. They've always been my thing. And I had conversations with people regarding African stock markets, and people would always say, Africans aren't worried about the stock market. They don't have any money. There's no stock markets in Africa. I don't know. I didn't really know, honestly. So I read up and found that, yes, of course, there are stock markets in Africa. And yes, of course, Africans do use the stock market. But who? Why? How? That's what I need to find out. So here we are. The Ndinka symbol in the middle there, I'm not going to mess it up in tree, I'll just say it in English. He who does not know will know from learning. I actually have it tattooed on my back. The quest for knowledge is a lifelong trek because growth is a continuous process, with each generation making its contribution. I have just presented 20 years of my growth, so please allow me to present my contribution, my seed, my harvest to the academic world. The social implications of sub-Saharan financial markets, case analysis from the Nairobi and Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Greetings and salutations, committee members, audience, cohorts. Thank you all for being here. Professor Madavo, thanks for thinking enough of my research to come and sit at yet another oral defense, and making a student from Howard feel welcome in your Georgetown classroom. Professor David, I'm glad you're feeling healthy enough to get out. But you taught me to think of the people first. You always say, what do the people think? How do the people feel? And you coined the phrase, why is it either or? Why not both and? You're right, why not both and? Professor Edgar, thank you for reminding me of the basics. Just last week, he said, you know, Curtis, the defense should be in a PowerPoint slide. Thanks, I know. Professor Cham, you never uttered a negative word, always positive, and always been a champion of my scholarship. Dr. Zoye, whew, I don't have too long, so let me just get through it. I don't know how many times unconsciously, let me just say, that I cursed your name, unconsciously. But it was for the best. It was for the better. Thank you for your guidance, firmness, and exemplary standards. I think I'm well prepared. Let's jump into it. So despite the range and multitude of developmental strategies in Africa and the proven connection between financial markets and economic development, there are minimal efforts towards studying Africa's investment class. Therefore, this study focused on Africa's retail and small investor, how they utilize the stock market, why they utilize the stock market, their perceptions, their sentiments regarding the stock market, and what influences the market has made on their respective societies. In general, it has been well documented that financial markets are closely linked to fully developed and prosperous and sustainable economies. Interestingly, there are 19 sub-Saharan stock markets, of which 14 were developed after 1989. But let's talk about two. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange, officially opened in 1888, but from 1888 to 1994, it's basically a tool for the rich. Specifically, a tool for rich white men who made their fortunes from gold or mineral mining. After the apartheid era, that's when it gets a little interesting. Three major changes happened. The technological advancements, making it a major player on the global scene. The implementation of corrective policies like the BEE from post-apartheid regime. And the rise of South Africa's black middle class, some call them the Black Diamonds. So you have Africa's largest and most active stock market, coupled with significant demographic, economic, and political change. Made JSE quite interesting. The other, the Nairobi Stock Exchange, which can be traced all the way back to the 20s when Kenya was still under colonial rule, but it was formally constituted in 1954, some 75 years after the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. From 1920 onward to Kenyan independence, foreign investors dominated share trading, while local citizens only accounted for 5% of the overall market. In 1963, Kenyan independence ushered in a more socialist view of policy creation called Kenyanization. Kenyanization policies' primary role was to transfer economic and social control to Kenyan citizens by ensuring most businesses were in the hands of Kenyans rather than foreign interests. But after the government sort of readjusted and rebalanced these policies, it resulted in a number of domestic investors. Their numbers shot through the roof from some 50,000 to 750,000. The number of brokerage houses increased and investment advisory firms soared. You probably can see that. At present, some believe the Nairobi Stock Exchange will play an increasingly important role in the Kenyan economy. The broad theory used to frame my research project is that financial markets play a critical role in economic growth. But this perspective is divided into two areas: financial intermediation in industrialized nations and financial intermediation in developing countries. Well-functioning financial instruments, markets, and institutions do reduce information, enforcement, and transaction costs. When the combination of these three costs are lowered by a well-functioning financial infrastructure, savings rates, investment decisions, and even technological innovations are influenced. Further, the neoclassical model of efficient capital markets suggests that the main role of the financial system is to allocate savings between competing investment projects, and post-Keynesian perspective is that financial systems are more than just intermediaries between savings and investments. They actually create savings as much as they allocate. But on the other side, financial markets in developing countries, it's a totally different animal. They're likely to have small and incomplete and fragmented financial markets that are normally, they fall short of the conditions needed to satisfy market efficiency. And therefore, as a result, the government usually plays a large role in fostering financial developments through job creation, capital allocation, and promoting banking services. But there's hope. Evidence from India and Brazil, which also used to be least developed countries, suggests capital market development, along with a bit of credit sector growth, is linked to GDP growth.